Hey guys, we begin to another episode of When the Scriptures Become Real. It's again a podcast where we learn, where we study, where we grow, where we try to become the best versions of ourselves as we can, as we continue to serve our Lord. Again, you guys can find the podcast on YouTube and anywhere you can get your podcast. We're just so thankful you guys are here and that you guys have found us today. Okay, so I know I'm a couple days late on this podcast, but for the last one, so again, before we get started with this one, go back and listen to the prequel podcast before this one, just so you can understand where we're going to go. We're actually going to start a series today on Boaz and Ruth. So we kind of did like a prequel to this series last week. So the latest podcast up to this point, go check that out. Go listen to it. And then once you listen to that, you got a little bit more context of where we're going with this one. But if you just happen to not listen to that one, you can still understand because we're literally starting from the beginning here with our series. So I'm really excited about this, podcast and the series coming up, because I think from the questions that I get, from the conversations that I have with people, the DMs, the in-person conversations, a lot of it is kind of like this anyway. So I think this is going to help everybody. And I'm really hoping that it could give you that encouragement that you need. Okay, so I don't know how to say this. Maybe let's give like a disclaimer before we dive into this podcast. So obviously, because we're going to look at the book of Ruth, obviously there is a relationship in this book that's going to blossom, right? So you understand that if you know anything about scripture, you know that that's going to come together. Ruth and Boaz, they're going to come together, right? So in the context of everything we're going to look at from this point for the rest of the series, yes, it's going to be from a relationship context, okay? But at the same time, the same things that we see in terms of relationship context can also work in principle with other things, right? So there's other things and other ways that you can use these lessons that we're going to learn, and you can use it for other things. It doesn't necessarily have to stay in the realm of a relationship. So I don't want us to kind of be put in a box here, but I just wanted to let you guys know that's going to be the context, but the principles behind the context you can use with everything, literally, and you're going to see that moving forward. Okay, I'm so excited for this. I'm so excited. I'm ready to get started here. Okay. So Ruth and Boaz, right? So on the previous one, we kind of looked a little bit at chapter 2 just to show you some things about how Ruth was kind of struggling through some things in chapter 2. But let's start from the beginning, right? So we can understand. So the prequel, we're done with the prequel. Now let's start with the real thing. So before we can actually get into the book of Ruth, we got to go into the book of Judges, because this happens during this time frame, okay? So the podcast, just so you can break it down, right, as we kind of conversate. And again, this is going to be conversation style. If you're watching the video, I've got my Bible and my tablet right here. I've got a pen in my hand. I've got a notebook. So it's almost like a study. So if I see something, we're going to go off script and we're going to kind of talk about it so we can really understand what's going on here in the study. So this is going to be Ruth and Boaz, part 1, the environment. Okay. Ruth and Boaz, part 1, the environment. We got to build this up. We got to let the text build it up. Okay, so let's open up our Bible to Judges chapter 21. Judges 21, and I want you to look at, just to get some more context, let's look at verses 24 and 25 of Judges 21. So then we can really understand what's going on. So here's our time frame, and here's the setting, and here's the environment that's being set here as we get started into this series. And the children of Israel, verse 24, departed at that time, every man to his tribe, every man to his family, and they went out from thence, every man to his own inheritance. So then watch verse 25. Then in those days, there was no king in Israel, and every man did which was right in his own eyes. So you got to think about the environment that's being built here. So the time frame in the book of Judges flowing into the book of Ruth. There's no king in Israel. Every man goes off to his own tribe and to his own inheritance. And literally the time of Ruth and the time of the Judges is a time of just complete rebellion. right? It's a time of basically anarchy, if you want if you want to say that, if we want to go that far. And so that's the environment that's being set here. So isn't it interesting when you think about especially how modern day life, um how we depict, well, especially even in movies, let's just stick there. Like in movies, sometimes even in life, how we depict two people coming together as it has to be a perfect situation. So the time frame has to be perfect. The environment has to be perfect. Everything that's going around me has to be lining up. Everything going around for her has to be lining up. All this stuff has to be lining up in order for things to work. But look at the environment that's being set here and that the Bible's showing us before Boaz is in the picture and before even Ruth is in the picture. The environment that's being set is a time of complete rebellion and complete anarchy because people aren't listening to God, but then there's also this time of rebellion. Okay. So that's kind of the environment even before we get into verse 1. So I wanted to say that just so you can understand what's going on here, because I think, and I'm just going to be honest, just kind of as I've studied this in the past, especially when you look at this book, everybody automatically jumps to chapter 2 and 3. Oh, they meet. Oh, she's gleaning in the fields. Oh, now Boaz is the kinsman redeemer. Now they're together now. So that's what's going to happen to you, Christian. That's what's going to happen. That's such a great, which it is. I'm not trying to downplay the beauty of what's going to happen here in the book, but we got to be real with how it happened. I'm not saying that the beauty isn't real, but I'm saying how it happened, that was real too. Okay? That was real too. And this may be an environment that that you may be going through or that you're going to see later too. So I think this is why this study is going to be so fruitful. Okay, so that's the environment, Judges 21 and verse 24 and 25, so we can understand a little bit of what's happening. Now let's see what's going on here. Now names and places are going to be very important as we keep going, okay? So, verse 1. And it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled. Okay, now the Bible, it's setting us up here. Now in the days when the judges ruled, and how did they rule? Right? There was no king in Israel, and every man did which was right in his own eyes, right? So now that's the time frame that they're living in. And now there was a famine in the land on top of that. And there was a certain man of Bethlehem, Judea, and he went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. So now you've got the environment that's being set up in Judges 21:25. Then in Ruth chapter 1, verse 1, now you have in the time of those judges when all that stuff was happening, then on top of that, what's going on in the land? Now there's a famine. Okay, so now there's a famine in the land, but I want you to notice where they are, though. It says they're in Bethlehem. You know what the word Bethlehem means? It means the house of bread. So isn't it ironic that God's people, being in the house of bread, didn't have any bread? So everything's supposed to line up and be perfect for you, right? Look at the situation that's being built here. We have to paint a picture of how bad things were. And isn't it so cool how when we look at how God works, God can make such a terrible situation and he can bring anyone out of it. But so many times because we see ourselves in the terrible situation, we feel as if God can't do anything with you or with me because the situation's too bad. The situation's not like everybody else's. Situation's not conventional. Situation doesn't look like everybody else's. So we think because it doesn't look that way when it starts, that God can't do anything with it. But it's so great that from this study, we're going to see that before these two people even meet, God is up to something even when nothing's going on. And I don't want you to miss that in your life too. You can feel the same way. We're going to make some application as we start to understand and piece these things together and piece the puzzle together. Sometimes in your life, you may feel this literally right now as you're listening to this podcast. It seems as if God is up to nothing. But when it seems like God is up to nothing, he's up to something. And so this is what's going on here. So Bethlehem, the house of bread, but there's a famine in the house of bread. So there's nothing here. Now we're introduced to a family. We're introduced to a family. So there was a man who went to sojourn in Moab, he, his wife, and his 2 sons. Verse 2. And the name of that man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons, Malhan and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab, and they continued there. Now, this is where we build this. So the word Bethlehem, or the name, means the house of bread. You know what the name Elimelech means? It means my God is king. So you have a husband and his wife Naomi and their 2 sons in Bethlehem in the house of bread with no bread, and there's famine, and everybody's doing everything that they want to do. So now, in that sense, what did Elimelech think the best decision was? I'm going to leave the house of bread, and I'm going to leave God in the house of bread. And then where am I going to go? Verse 2. I'm going to go to Moab. If we're breaking this down into points, we have to build this up here. But and this is the beauty of study. You got to do this back work before we can understand what's going on. So here's the first thing that I'm seeing if we want to break this down in points. If we look at the environment and you look at your environment right now where you are, you can think in terms of if it's a person, if it's a place or a thing. You may think where you are right now, there's nothing left here for me. There's nothing left here for me. So think about Elimelech. I'm following God in the house of bread, but there's no bread. And what does my name mean? My God is king. So I have 2 choices. In this famine where everything seems to be so dry, there's nothing here. My family's struggling. Nothing's here for me. I could stay because who's still here? As bad as things are, as dry as things are, as terrible as things are, who is still a part of the house of bread? God. Or there's this land over here, and that land is Moab. And Moab is wealthy, but Moab is powerful, but Moab, they're also a prideful people. And Moab doesn't worship the God of heaven. Moab, they worship the god Chemosh. So I got a decision to make. Do I stay here and struggle with the Lord? Or do I make an executive decision and I leave from this place and I go to this one? You know, sometimes you and I, as we build this and as the Bible is building this, that's exactly where you might be right now, whether it's a term of a person, a place, or a thing. Right now, where you are, how old you are, the things that you've been through, the things that you've seen, right? The things that have been so difficult for you. You look at where you are currently right now, whether, again, like I said, whether that's a person, whether that's a place or a thing, there's nothing left for me here. It's dry here. There's nothing here. I'm not going to excel here. I'm not going to get better here. I'm not going to do anything here. But if you're a Christian, guess who's still there with you? What did Jesus say in Matthew chapter 28? And who is Jesus? Where are they at? They're in the house of bread. What does Jesus call himself? I am the bread of life. So Matthew chapter 28, as we follow Christ where we are, Jesus said, I, being the bread, I will never leave you and I will never forsake you. So with him saying that, sometimes what we can do, and in terms of spirituality and even in terms of the relationship context, right, from Ruth and Boaz, what we can think as you and I kind of walk through and study this together, man, there's nothing here. It's a famine here. It's dry here. I'm laughing right now because a friend of mine always says, he'll call or he'll text and be like, man, Jordan, you know, it's drier here than a biscuit, bro. It's hilarious. I was like, bro, why are you eating dry biscuits? But that's a whole other situation. But that's what he says, man. It's just dry. It's just dry. There's nothing here for me. So because there's nothing here for me, What I'm going to do and what you might be doing right now, we may make the executive decision. I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go to a place or to a person or to a thing that's seemingly better than what I've got. And so because we do that, we're going to move like Elimelech moved his entire family from the house of bread, his name meaning my God is king, and I'm going to move my family to Moab. And so for you and I, as we look at this is so important because this is the process of how it begins. The process of Ruth begins with his decision. I'm going to leave this place and I'm going to go to a place that seemingly looks better than what I've got. You know, the thing about it, guys, is it is so easy. And I am, if anyone's guilty, I'm guilty. It is very easy to look at your plot, at your lot, at what's going on with you. And it's very easy to look at somebody else's plot, somebody else's grass. And you look and you just see, why can't mine grow like that? Why can't mine look like that? Why can't mine be healthy like that? And then you look and you compare, and then you look how dry things are where you are, and you look at how seemingly, I keep using that word, which is going to be important, it seemingly looks better with these other person, places, or things. And so I got to try it. I got to go because nothing's here. And if I stay here, and you see the excuses that we make, if I stay here, it's not like something's going to happen. So I'm going to go. You see, here's the power that we miss. And I don't want you to miss this as I've missed it. The place can be dry just like Bethlehem was. The place can have no bread. The place can have famine. The place could be just like it was in Bethlehem at this time, Judges chapter 21, verse 25. It could be the same. But one thing that I've forgotten, it's very easy for me to get, for me to forget, and it may be easy for you to forget right now as you're listening to this or watching this pod. Wherever you are, you look at your environment, you look at what's not happening, you look at who's not there, you look at what's not there, what's not going. But the thing that you and I tend to forget is, yes, all of this stuff is here, but guess who else is still here too? What does Elimelech's name mean? My God and my King. He's still here too. And so, guys, I don't want you to forget that wherever you are, yes, things may be dark, things may be a famine, things may be difficult, things might be tough. You know, there may be no bread. It may be tough where you are, and I understand it. And I, in no way am I trying to demean those things that may be happening right now. But in your mind, even though you still see those things, who's still there with you? My God and my King. And just like Matthew said, Jesus is still here with us too. So we don't want to miss that as we're building this up. And again, this is why it's so important to understand the Bible in its context. I mean, we can't just start at the love story here. We gotta really see how the Bible is setting this book of Ruth up for us. Okay, so as we look at this, if we're breaking this down in points in terms of organization, there's nothing left for me here. We're even think about from Genesis, right? Remember with Abram and Lot, everybody was fighting because there was too much going on, and then Abram said, "You pick. What do you want?" And then Lot said, "I want to go over there. That it looks better over there." And where does he pitch his tent? He pitched his tent near Sodom and Gomorrah. The next thing you know, Lot's sitting there at the gate, which is a sign of authority in a wicked city. And what does Elimelech do? He leaves and he goes towards a wicked city. It's the same concept. So number one, the environment that this book is setting up is the same environment you might be in, and there's nothing left. I've been here forever. I've been here, for this long. I'm older now. You might be saying that. You're younger now. You might be in your early 20s. Man, I've been here for my entire life. There's nothing here for me. You might be older, upper 30s, early 30s. I've been here forever. There's nothing happening. Nothing's going to happen here. You see what's happening here? So now as we look at it, there's nothing left for me. But then if we're going to break it down in points, then if we're going to look at kind of verse 3 through 5, then after you leave, now you're left alone. Watch this. Okay, verse 3. So it's ironic because Elimelech, my God and my king, he leaves the house of bread. He goes to Moab. And then how does verse 3 start, which is kind of sad? And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, what does the text simply say if you're reading it with me, guys? It just said that he died. Now, we don't know the time frame. We don't know the time frame. I mean, when they went to Moab, the day after he could have passed. He could have passed a couple years after. But either way, when he left the house of God, the house of bread, and when he went to Moab, Elimelech died. Now who's alone? Now the story, the narrative switches. It starts off with Elimelech. Now the narrative switches to Naomi because who's alone now? She is. So now she's a single mother with her 2 boys. Now, verse 4. And then those 2 sons, they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah. The name of the other was Ruth. Now she's introduced here. And they dwelled in Moab for 10 years. And Mahlon and Chilhon died also both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. So think about how sad the situation is. Think about where they started. They started in Bethlehem, the house of bread. There's anarchy. There's rebellion. There's no bread in the house of bread. It seems as if seemingly God is doing nothing for us here. So we're going to move our family and we're going to go to Moab. And when we go to Moab, Elimelech dies. My 2 sons have 2 wives, and then my 2 sons die. So now it's just Naomi, it's just Ruth, and it's Orpah. How sad of a situation is that? You start off, you see how progressively worse this book gets? You start off, Elimelech, there's nothing here for me. Now Elimelech's not in the picture. Now guess who's saying that now? Now Naomi's saying that. Nothing's left. My husband's gone. My sons are gone. These women, yes, they're my daughters-in-law, but these women are of Moab. I'm alone. Isn't it interesting how we think when we move from one place to another, from one person to another, from one thing to another? Isn't it interesting how we automatically think because we made a move from one thing to another, that move is automatically going to be the best thing in the world? Because in our minds, how do we justify that move? Well, at least it's better than what I have now. Let me just give you guys a piece of advice from what I've learned and from what the scripture teaches and from what others have taught me and what I've physically seen. Do not make a move from a person, place, or thing because in your mind you think moving from what you have is better than what you got. Because guess what? Then automatically, we don't even think about this. We don't even value the new thing because we're just trying to get rid of the old one. So we don't even see the new thing for what it is. And then even if the new thing is good, we don't value it well just because we just want to move from the old one. Just don't make a move just for the sake of, well, at least it's better than what I got now. I didn't have anything, so at least this is better than what I've got now. Never make a move for a person, place, or thing if that's your mindset. Because if that's the case, if that's how you're going to move, guess where you're going to find yourself? And guess where I found myself? You're going to find yourself being just like Naomi. You thought that move was the best thing to do, but then guess what you're going to end up being? What does the text say? The text says in verse number 3, and Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left. You know, you're going to make a move, and then ultimately you're going to look around. I'm the only one left. It's very interesting how dismal and how dark and how dry and just how It's just the book is just set up in such a dark manner to where it really wants to show you that as bad as things literally look in front of you, that just because God is not acting and you can't see it, it doesn't mean that he's not setting something up. So as we read this and as we've studied this up to this point, it has seemed very dark and dismal, hasn't it? But in the eyes of God, guess what? God is using all of these things and God is moving. And so for you, where you are, I understand there literally may be nothing there. And I'm not saying that there's not. I believe you. If you say there's nothing there, I believe you that there's nothing there. I 100% believe you. But just because there's nothing there doesn't mean God's not moving. And that's the trick that Satan wants us to fall into. And I don't want you guys to fall into that, right? So we want to make sure that we still see, and even myself, I want you all to still see that the Lord is still moving. As dark and as terrible and as dry as things could be. So as they start off, this family in verses 1 and 2, the entire family had the attitude, there's nothing left for us here in Bethlehem, in the house of bread. So then we're going to go to Moab. So now Naomi is left alone with her two daughter-in-laws, and now she's just left. She's just left alone. And here's another quick nugget too that I don't want you to miss as we study and conversate on this more. I understand that some things, some people, and some places look so green, look so healthy. The promises that they'll say, the fun times that you can have, the good trips that you can take. I get it. But here's what I'm learning. Not only through this book, but personally. Here's what I'm learning. Dry, dark famine with God is better than any greener grass out there. I know that even sounds weird to say and even weird to even think about. But dry, dark famine, whether that's dry, dark, and famine in a person, place, or thing in your life, it is so much better with God than any greener grass you can find out there. Now, in our curiosity, and I'm just being real, in our curiosity, you're going to try, right? You're going to try because you're going to see, man, that just has to be better than and I get it. And I understand why people try. I never down that. I get it. I get why you try. But anything with God, and it can be so dry, I still have God. And so do you. So don't forget that. So that's 1 and 2. This is verse 3 and 5. Now here's what's really cool. Now let's read 6 and 7. Okay, so then this is so good. Verse 6. Then she, talking about Naomi, then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. That's interesting, isn't it? But watch how the text reads this. I don't want you to miss it. So that she might return from the country of Moab. This is so great. I love how the Bible words this. For she had heard that in the country of Moab, how the Lord had visited his people in giving them what, everybody? In giving them bread. Why did Elimelech want to leave the house of bread in the first place? Because there was no bread. Now Naomi, now her husband dies, now her sons die. What does she hear about the house of bread? What's there now? Bread. Okay. There's a lot to unpack here, okay? I get so excited about this. There's so much to unpack here. Now, the attitude that we can have with the person, place, or thing. Well, the person, place, or thing right now it's just dry, it's just dismal, it's a famine, there's nothing here. But this said person, place, or thing seems so much better than what I've got. So I'm going to go try this person, place, or thing. I'm going to leave this and go there. Here's what's interesting. You see the cycle that's set here? The first mind is there's nothing left for me here. The second mindset, now you're left alone. Now the third mindset, is now you have no other choice than to go back and go home. You got no other choice. Now, here's the thing. As we look at this, Naomi heard that back home there was bread. Isn't it interesting that the place that was once dry and famine and dismal, what does the house of bread have now? They've got bread. Isn't it ironic that sometimes for you and I, the persons, the places, and the things that we leave, when we leave because we think there is better out there, guess what's going to happen inevitably? I promise you 1000%. If this hasn't happened to you, it's going to happen to you. And again, I want to say this clear. This is a good thing that this happens. At some point in your life, you're going to look at your current person, place, or thing, and you're going to look and you're going to justify within yourself why this person, place, or thing is dry, why it's not good for you right now, whether it's pride or your ego, or whether you just think something's better, or you're just tired of it, or it's too simple, whatever you want to say. And you're going to go try a new person, a new place, and a new thing. And you're going to go off. And it may be good for a couple months, couple years, but then guess what inevitably is going to happen? I promise you. Inevitably, just like Naomi, you're going to hear about what's happening with the previous person, place, or thing. And then you're going to compare. And if you're honest, man, I shouldn't have left. I shouldn't have left said person, place, or thing. Why? Because I thought that there was something else better out there. You know, that's actually a really good place for you to be. Everybody in life, I've had to go through it. You had to go through it. If you haven't, I promise you will go through it. You're going to go through that. And when that happens, you have two choices when you make that choice. When you hear, after you've already made a choice to pick something else or someone else, when you hear that before, now they're doing better, and now places are doing better and things are doing better now, you're going to have two choices. One, you can go down a deeper hole. Meaning this, I started off dry. I left, quote unquote, dry place, person, or thing, and I left to go find another person, place, or thing. Now, guess what? The place that I left and the person that I have now and the people that I have now, it's not good. So then guess what? I messed up in the first one. I messed up with them. Now, guess what? Now, I just don't even want to try anymore because I just keep messing up. I just keep getting it wrong. I just can't get it right. So now you'll go down a deeper hole because you'll look back at your decisions after you heard, just like Naomi did. Now, you can make that choice. Or you can do what Naomi did. What did she do? Let's read the text. She arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. For she heard in the country of Moab, where she was, who she picked with her husband, how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. And when she went forth out of the place that she was, and what place is that, everybody? Moab. With her and her two daughters-in-law, and watch how the end of verse 7 stops. And they went their way to do what, everybody? To return to the land of Judah. What's the second choice if you find yourself in that situation? When you hear and when you understand and when you're honest with yourself and saying, I made the wrong choice. When you're honest with yourself, guess what humble people, Matthew chapter 5, verse 3, guess what they'll do? When a humble person has made the wrong choice when it comes to a person, place, or thing, what will they do? They will return. Luke 15, what was his original choice? Dad, it's dry here. Everything is just so boring here. But he had everything, so it's not like he was in a famine, which makes his situation a little worse than this one. I got everything here. But you know what? I just want to go. I want better. So he made his choice. So then after he made his choice, he found himself eating with the pigs. And then guess what he had to do? I had to see that I made the wrong choice. I chose the wrong places. I chose the wrong people. I chose the wrong things. So in his humility in Luke 15 with the prodigal son, What did he have to decide? What did he say? Literally, I will go and return to my father. What did Naomi say? I will go and return to the house of bread. What are you going to say right now? Well, I made the wrong choice with the person, place, or thing. I just don't want them to know I made the wrong choice. I just don't. You can go down that wormhole, or you can take this route and just return. And just return. It's very interesting. And she came back to the house of bread. And so I don't want you to miss how this book starts. That's literally the cyclical cycle that all of us are still caught in today. With a person, place, or thing, well, it's dry here. There's nothing here. So I'm going to go and try to find it in other places, people, and things. Then I don't find it. Then when I don't find it, I'm left alone. Then when I'm left alone and I'm hurt, now guess what I have the choice to do? I could stay hurt right here, or I can make the choice to go back to square one and go back. So all of us are stuck in one of three places. Right now, you might be stuck in the, hey, it's dry here phase. So you might be in the moment where I got to make a move and I'm about to go for this person, place, or thing. That might be you right now. Or you might be in process 2, where you've already made the choice. Now you're left by yourself because said person, place, or thing isn't what you thought they were. You built them up and you saw real quick that person, place, or thing wasn't what you thought it was. Or now you're in phase 3. You may be in the phase where you're deciding, should I quit and give up because I made these bad choices? Or should I find a way to humble myself and go back and return to the right people, to the right places, to the right things? What are we going to do? And that's how we stop this one. Let's go. Cliffhanger. That's how we stop this one. You see how this book starts? And we literally haven't touched Ruth. We just said her name, like in verse, 3? No, verse 4. We just said her name in verse 4. But look at all this back work that it takes to really build this picture of what's going on and how bad it is and what's about to get set up. But we really got to be real with the text. Rather than jumping to chapter 2 and 3, oh, well, they're getting together. Oh, it's so great. It's so lovey-dovey. We'll post pictures on Instagram and Facebook so everybody. No, we're not going to go there. We're going to look and see how dark it was. This is real. This is dark. But as we get here, I love how the end of verse 7 stops. We're going to go back home. And when we go back home and on the way home, now we're going to start seeing the plans that God's going to set up. So this was part 1 of the series of Ruth and Boaz, the environment, right? Part 1. You had to build this environment and keep going. And then we're going to see beginning in verse 8 next week, hopefully next Monday, right? If I'm not late like I was this week, we're going to see next week. We're going to see how this changes and how things are going to start moving in the direction of 2 people meeting, right? But 2 unlikely people meeting in such a bad environment. I can't wait. I literally can't wait. So I'm excited for that. I hope you enjoyed this part 1 of the environment. Again, you can start here if you haven't listened to the prequel. You can start here and you'll be fine. But if you want to get kind of the full thing, go listen to the previous podcast before this one, get the prequel, then listen to this one, part 1, the environment, and then Lord willing, next week we'll get into part 2. So I really hope that this you got some messages here and some nuggets here from Ruth as we've studied this together. And I really hope that this builds your excitement for really starting to study through this book. So appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Again, reach out if you guys need anything, DM, send me a message. We have Zoom calls, personal calls, whatever it is, we're here for you guys. And we're here to grow together in the Lord. So again, love you guys. Thank you guys. And we will see you hopefully on Monday next week. Thanks, guys.